Hey, what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Ethical Marketing Secrets. We got a pretty interesting one here because we're going to be talking all about Facebook ad copy, how to get people to stop and read your ad, and how to get people to click your ad, right? And how to get more people to click your ad. You're going to be talking all about that. It's going to be a pretty cool one. And yeah, so go ahead and roll the intro and then we'll get right into it. Alright, welcome back. So this is going to be a pretty interesting one. Like I said, we're going to be talking all about ad copy, right? And I absolutely love ad copy, right? It's the main thing that I do right now, right? I help businesses all around the world create better ad copy, targeting, all that kind of stuff to drive better results with their Facebook ads, right? And a lot of people don't really seem to understand the value of a good ad copy, right? Because the ad copy is going to be one of the main determining factors if your ad is going to be successful or not, right? Now, there's obviously some exceptions here and there, right? But in the vast majority of cases, right, there's some things that you're going to have to be able to do within your ad copy, right, within your creative, to be able to actually get people to click on it, right, and ultimately buy from you, right? So let's talk a little bit about ad copy and the kind of structure that we're going to be using, right? Now, this kind of goes back to what Facebook advertising actually is, okay? So Facebook advertising is different from Google, right? And it's different from YouTube because Facebook advertising is based pretty much entirely on interruption-based marketing, right? So what that means is, in contrast to Google, people are searching things in, they're typing things into the bar, and then they get something, they get a related ad to what they typed in, right? It's not the same way with Facebook, right? People generally are just kind of relaxing on Facebook, right? They're scrolling, they're talking about cats, all that kind of stuff, right? And they're scrolling and then they see an ad, right? So generally, at least the pattern that I've noticed is that Facebook ads tend to have a much lower click rate than things like Google ads and YouTube ads for that reason, because it's based on interruption and it's not based on intent, right? And that's why Facebook ads can be a lot more difficult to kind of get right because it's based on interruption, right? So with that being said, the first thing that we really have to do with our copyright is we have to be able to stop the scroll somehow. Okay, we have to be able to stop the scroll, and this is done through a couple different things, right? So this is going to be partly your copy, but it's mainly going to be your image or video and your headline, okay? Because I know personally when I've been scrolling on Facebook and I see an interesting headline, I might just click on the ad just completely based on a headline, or I'll see an interesting image and then I'll read the headline, and then I'll read the copy, and then I'll go ahead and click over if the copy resonated with me, right? Generally, what's going to happen is people are going to be kind of interrupted by the video or the image. That's going to stop the scroll. That's going to interrupt them with the scroll, right? And they're going to read the headline, which should hopefully be related to the copyright and the offer that's on the other end of the ad. And the headline is really going to be one of the determining factors that gets them interested in reading the actual copy itself, right? But let's talk about the actual copy. I'm talking about the primary text that goes on the ad. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of making it completely based on the product, okay? So they'll be like, hey, check out this cool thing. Go ahead and buy it, right? And the problem when you approach ad copy like this is it doesn't work. At least a lot of the time it does not work this way because people aren't necessarily looking for this, right? They're looking for what benefit this has, right? And this is also going to be dependent. I talked about this in another live where a lot of people make this mistake where they don't actually think about who they are selling to. So this poses a big problem when you go to write the ad copy because they'll go and try and advertise something like this. Obviously it's an example. They'll go and try and advertise something like this and it does not work, right? It just does not work because they're just throwing this product in their face and they're trying to get them to buy it. That's not how things work on Facebook, okay? So when you're writing your ad copy, you have to think in terms of the WIIFM, right? What's in it for me? Because the person is always going to be asking themselves that question as they are reading through the copy. And if you do not properly answer that question, they're not going to click on the ad and you're not going to make any sales, or you're not going to get any leads or whatever, right? So your ad copy has to address that question right on the ad. So, and in order to do that, you actually have to know who you're selling to. Okay, these are the fundamentals. You have to know who you're selling to. So let's say I establish that I'm selling to somebody who's like, I don't know, really obsessed with puzzles, right? They have like a bunch of different puzzles, and they like to solve them, and they just like twisty puzzles, right? So this isn't really a product, right? What I'm actually trying to promote on the ad here is another addition to their collection, or something intriguing that's going to keep them occupied for hours, right? A new challenge. Okay, this is suddenly a lot more closer than just throwing a product out there and saying go buy this, right? Instead, you're getting them to think about why they would want to buy this in the first place, and you're tapping into their internal desires as to why they would want this. And you can't do that unless you know who you're selling to. So if instead, like I said, I go out there and I say, okay, well, you have this cool thing, it's going to be a great addition to your collection, but this is a cool puzzle in of itself. It's a really big challenge, and only X amount of people have solved it in the world, right? Now, suddenly, right, that copy is a lot more interesting, it's a lot more engaging, and it's speaking directly to someone. That's the main thing that you have to understand about ad copy, and that's going to put you ahead of everybody else who is advertising the other way, where they just throw a product out there and they say, oh, new cube, buy now, here's a discount, right? Those creatives only work for so long, and they generally fatigue a lot easier, because it's not really based on emotions, right? It's not really based on desires, it's just completely based on the product, and you're going to get a lot less clicks and a lot less sales that way. Now, there is an exception to this, and I kind of ran across this earlier, where if your product naturally fulfills a core desire, then you don't really have to think that hard about it, right? So a good example of this is if you have like this money-saving product, right? So if you have this product or this course or this digital thing that saves you money, saving money is actually a core desire. Okay, so just writing about how it saves you money, you're naturally going to write about that, right? Even though that is the product itself, it saves you money, it's also talking about that core desire, and basically it fulfills that core desire of saving money. So that ad is probably going to be it's probably going to be effective anyway, just because the product just naturally fits into that, right? But when we have a product that does not naturally fit, right, we have to think about very clearly who we're selling to and how we can fit it into a core desire, right? Or really think about the benefits and really what's in it for the customer when we are throwing this product in front of them. Okay, now in terms of like raw structure, when we're talking about Facebook copy, it's usually there's going to make a lot more sense if you actually go onto the ad library and you see how your favorite advertisers are writing their ads. Okay, but basically most of the copies that you're going to see are going to be it's going to be like a hook, right? There's going to be like a hook right at the top, that's the sentence. You basically technically have two different hooks, okay? So you have the headline at the bottom, which is under the image. That's going to be kind of like a hook. And then you're going to have another hook right on the top of the copy that's going to basically encourage them and give them a reason to read the actual copy itself, okay? So the first couple sentences, or the first sentences in your copy, is almost always going to be some kind of hook, right? Some kind of curious concept, some kind of crazy result, right? Some kind of interesting thing that they're going to get. Now, you can kind of treat this kind of like a second headline, like I said. And I don't mean to get sidetracked here, but I want to bring this up so I don't forget. When it comes to headlines and hooks and that kind of stuff, I recommend looking at different news articles. Look at how they are wording and how they are structuring those headlines, okay? Because those news outlets, a lot of those journalism websites rely on people clicking on that, right? Because they get the ad revenue from the ads that are on the page, right? So their business usually heavily relies on people clicking over and actually reading it. So take a look at like the different headlines that you see in news articles, journalism websites, that kind of thing, and you'll start to get a feel of how to make something curious. There's a tip I learned from Alex Becker, one of his earlier videos, where he talks about this website called Viral Nova. Okay, Viral Nova, and it's literally just like this crazy like thing of like these weird, unusual stories. But the thing that you should be paying attention to on Viral Nova is that the way that they are writing headlines. Okay, this company got sold for like millions of dollars or whatever, right? And it's all because they were able to figure out how to make curious headlines, write curious stories and that kind of stuff. And that was able to generate a lot of money and make it a very valuable company, right? So make sure that you're putting a lot of effort into your headlines and into your copy. And it's going to go a long way when it comes to your advertising campaigns, okay? And the same rule kind of applies to the first couple lines, because it's kind of like a headline, because the really like the only purpose of the first couple lines is to hook them in and get them invested in reading the rest of the copy. Okay, maybe we can go over some examples if I can find them on the ad library. Now, the rest of the copy is going to be predominantly based on relating to the customer. Again, we're talking about the whole what's in it for them, right? So you're going to be spending a couple lines talking about what's in it for them, the benefits, how it fulfills their core desires and that kind of stuff. And then you're going to have some kind of call to action, right? Like an offer and a call to action. So you're saying, you're hooking them with something, and then you're saying, I can help you, right? You're going to love this thing I'm going to give you. And then all that's left is to kind of give them an offer, right? How are you going to help them, right? So you have to actually, write out the offer. How are you going to fulfill this thing that you're talking about on the ad? A common structure that you see with this is leading with a problem, okay? So like the hook will be like, I don't know, let's try and think of something. Like, oh, you have a broken phone. And then the next couple lines will be like talking about how we're a company that has qualified technicians that can fix their phone and save them money because, we're qualified, and then you don't have to go to a big company, right? So we're talking about saving money, and then the benefit is, they can get their phone fixed, right? So like the first line, you have a broken phone, right? Just flat out say you have a broken phone. The next couple lines, you can save money because we have, dedicated technicians and we're not a large company. So you can save some money and you can get your phone fixed, right? That's the second part of the copy. And then the third part of the copy can be like, okay, you can come in and you can get our package, which will fix your phone for X amount, right? And I don't know, maybe we'll give you like a wet wipe or something for it, right? You have to give them some kind of offer that obviously fits into the ad, and then you have to tell people what to do, right? Because people, I guess kind of debatable, right? But people like to be led. You have to tell them exactly what to do. So give them a strong call to action, right? Click this link, give us a call, fill out this lead form, right? Now, some of you might be using like the UTM parameters, and it, if you've ever used UTM parameters, it makes your link really huge. So generally, when I'm using UTM parameters, I'll still have a call to action. I'll just be like, click the button below, and that way the big link is kind of encapsulated into the link box, right? So I can still use the UTM parameters, but I can still have a strong call to action at the same time, right? So that's just a side note for if you're using UTM parameters, right? But that's really all there is, all the foundations that you need to understand ad copy. It really is that simple, okay? But just because it is simple does not mean it is easy to master, okay? It's kind of like chess or checkers, right? It's very easy to learn these things, but it's very difficult to master, right? So think about the different building blocks that I just talked about. Especially, and I can't stress this enough, you really have to think about the WIIFM, right? What's in it for me? If your copy does not answer that question, the chance that it is going to flop is going to be very high. Okay, I've had a lot of people come through my gig, and a lot of the reason that their ads are failing is because it's all completely product based, or it's all completely about the company, right? You do not want to make the whole ad about the product, right? and you don't want to even really talk that much about features, right? You want to be talking about the benefits and the meanings of those features, okay? Because the other thing that you have to understand is that the reason people buy things in the first place isn't because of logic, okay? People do not buy things because of logic. They buy things because of emotion, right? They buy things because it has meaning to them, because it gives them a result that they are looking for. That's the real reason that people buy things. So understanding that it's emotional based, not product based, emotional based, and the whole what's in it for me question, you're already really ahead of people who are still making things all about the product. I see it way too often. I see it all the time when I'm scrolling and looking at ads. I see it all the time with a lot of people who come through my gig. This is exactly how I was able to drop a solar company's lead cost by 20%, okay? Because their original ad, I kid you not, their original ad was all about their company. It's like, oh, we're like an amazing company. We're, we have a high BBB rating, right? We're accredited. We're this, we're that. And that's not how you want to write the ad, right? As soon as I gave them a copy that was based around a what's in it for me question, right? I'm like, okay, let's make this about how you can save money, right? So if they go with solar, that means they're saving money. That means they're cutting down their electricity bill, right? They might not be getting rid of it, but they're reducing it, right? Maybe it makes them feel good about themselves because they're contributing to a cleaner environment, right? Things like that. You have to think of your ads in terms of benefits and meanings, okay? And as soon as I gave them that copy, within just a couple days, it cut their lead cost by over 20%. And that's not a coincidence, right? And it was also a combination of actually having a good pattern interrupt, which I was talking a little bit about earlier, right? So just to kind of recap on that, remember that Facebook advertising is really about interruption, okay? The first rule of Facebook advertising is that it's about interruption. So you have to find some way to stop that scroll. And once you stop that scroll, you have to give them a good reason to read your ad. That's what the headline is going to be for. The headline's kind of like a cross between getting them to read the ad and also getting them to click, right? Because some people are going to click, like me. I do this all the time, solely based on the headline, and some people are going to read the ad solely based on the headline. So you have to make sure that it's curious enough to be able to get them interested in reading or clicking, okay? And once you have that part, you also need a hook at the top of the copy that encourages them to read the rest of the copy. And then the next section in your copy is going to be all about answering what's in it for them. The benefits, the meanings, all that kind of stuff is going to go in there in the middle. It's kind of like a sandwich, right? So you have like the hook, and then you have the stuff in the middle. I don't know, it's like the beef patty or whatever. And then you have like your lettuce, which is like the offer, and then you have the bun, which is the call to action, right? The bottom bun or whatever, right? If you want an analogy. Yeah, so if you take that thing, I can guarantee you, well, maybe not guarantee you, right? Because it depends on a variety of factors, right? So I retract that, but I can almost guarantee you, if you go about doing it this way, thinking about what's in it for me and having a solid structure in place, because you also want to make sure that you're not just kind of slapping like the offer on there and then throwing it out as the ad, right? Sometimes that works, okay? But predominantly you want to make sure that you're testing with all these parts of the copy, right? So the hook, get them interested in reading. The context part where you're establishing context, what's in it for me, what are the benefits, what are the meanings, and then the offer, right? You want to make sure that, and the call to action. You want to make sure that you have all these parts of the structure in place. Now, with that being said, go ahead and check out the different advertisers that you see running ads, your favorite advertisers. Go ahead and check them out. I can guarantee you a lot of their ads are using this type of structure. Okay, it's like some kind of hook, maybe like a story, right? That can also count, as the context thing, right? And then some kind of offer. A good example of this is if you follow Russell Brunson, right? He's all about the hook, story, offer format. Go ahead and look at the million ads that he's running. They run so many ads. Take a look at the ads that someone like him is running, and you'll start to be able to pick out the structure. of how ad copy works on Facebook, and that's going to help you a lot, seeing how other people do it, and it's also going to give you inspiration on how to make your own copies. Okay, this is very important. Now, let's go ahead and shift into another topic, right? I want to talk about pattern interrupts, which I briefly went about earlier, but I want to go into more detail about how to actually get somebody to stop in the first place, right? Because if nobody stops to read your ad, they're never going to click over and become a buyer or a lead, right? So how do we actually get somebody to stop? How do we actually get somebody to stop scrolling? And this is going to be predominantly based on, like I said, your image or your video, okay? Now, generally what I recommend when you're picking an image is you need to have some kind of curious subject, okay? Because people are getting more and more, conditioned to those stock images, right? So like that like family, sitting in like the living room, right? It just looks very stock. It's not very interesting, and people scroll right past that because people don't like ads, right? So if you want people to stop, you need something interesting, right? So you either need something interesting or a depiction of a desirable result. Okay, you see this all the time with those Shopify people, those people selling those Shopify courses where the whole ad is literally just like a screenshot, right? And it's like they made like $1 million or whatever, right? That's a desirable result. Or you can have a depiction of an interesting subject or object, right? So a good example of this was I forgot who the advertiser was, but they were selling some kind of course on Facebook ads. And their picture was this guy sitting at a computer, and he was in like a shark suit. And it was curious, right? Because you're like, why is that guy sitting in a shark suit, right? Why is he wearing a shark suit? And they were actually talking about a Facebook ads course, right? On how to get results with Facebook ads, right? So a common mistake people make is they think the image or the video has to always be directly related to the product or service that they are promoting, right? But the thing is like I said, Facebook advertising is interruption-based marketing, okay? So it does not have to be directly related to what you're selling. It just has to be interesting or intriguing enough to get them to stop. Okay, people who are really good at this are, again, like Russell Brunson, Kat Howell, Frank Kern, like all the big people. Take a look at their ads and look at the different images and videos that they are using, because they are masters at getting people to stop in their tracks and want to read the ad, okay? Now, another characteristic of a pattern interrupted, besides like an interesting subject or a desirable result, is going to be bright shades, okay? Like bright shades of yellow or red or something like that. If you're using a lot of green and blue, I find that to be generally it's too passive. It's too passive of a color palette, and people tend to scroll right past that. So shifting gears for a second, going back to that solar company I was talking about where we dropped their lead cost by 20%, one of the things that we did was we updated their ad image, okay? The original image that they had was this guy, this guy was like standing on a roof and he was like installing a solar panel, and it was the most boring image that I've ever seen, okay? It was just straight shades of blue, and it just wasn't interesting at all, okay? Now, I forgot the image that we replaced it with, right? But it was using the characteristics I was talking about before, and that was one of the contributors to dropping that lead cost, right? Because that got more people to stop and ultimately become leads, okay? So I want to switch over for the desktop for a second, and I want to show you some examples because we're talking about visuals and things like that. So it's going to help to see some actual examples of what I would consider a pattern interrupt. All right, so let's go ahead and switch over. So we can see right here, a lot of the time, this is where I'm going to start, okay? Now, I use a couple different websites, okay? I use Pexels, and yeah, Pixabay, Pexels, and Unsplash. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And almost always, one of the first things that I will type in is bright or bright color. Now, the reason I type in bright or bright color is because they tend to have the first thing that we're talking about, or the second thing, is something that has a bright shade in it. So you can see this pineapple. This in of itself is kind of like an interesting pattern interrupt because it's a pineapple wearing shades. That's not something that you see every day. And then the second part that we talked about was that it has this bright shade of yellow. All right, so this has basically all the elements that I'm talking about, where this is really going to stand out in the news feed, okay? And this is probably going to get somebody really interested in reading the copy. Obviously, if a lot of people aren't using it already. Now, let's see, what else do we got here? So this could also be interesting, right? Something abstract with bright shades in it. And again, you know, everything in advertising is always going to come down to testing, right? But this is generally what I see works and what I see advertisers doing that are successful at what they do. They're looking at things that have bright colors, abstract images, that kind of thing. I remember I was looking at a Sam Ovens ad, and it was literally like this abstract kind of shape. Yeah, it was literally just like an abstract geometric shape. And that was like the whole image. So something else I like to do is type in abstract and see if we can find any kind of interesting patterns. You'll find that some advertisers are using like these abstract paintings. This is an image that I've used before. We see we got the bright shades of red, and we got like an interesting kind of pattern going on there. Another thing I've seen pretty often is optical illusions. I've seen more advertisers using that. Let's see if we can find one. I haven't used this myself, but I've seen a lot of other ones using this type of imagery, right? So maybe something like this could be interesting if Facebook would allow that. But you can see optical illusions can trick our eyes, and that can serve as a really good pattern interrupt. I need to see who are using that. I believe Cat Hell was using one recently. So optical illusions are another interesting thing to try. Maybe not too much, but definitely something that you want to test because they can be really good pattern interrupts. Because especially with those ones that have those interesting effects, like for example, like there's that one that's like of like the triangle, and like it looks like it's going back, but it's actually coming forward, and it like plays tricks on your eyes. So things that play tricks on your eyes are also good interrupts, which seem to be a newer tactic that people are using. I haven't seen that many people using that until recently. Let's see, what else do we got? So again, when I'm first thinking for images, one of the first things I'll usually check out is bright, and just see what kind of interesting images I can get just with this keyword. Let's see, yeah, bright. Just type in bright or bright color and just see what comes up. Another cool thing that I have used previously, and I've also seen other people use, is a cityscape. So some kind of like aerial view of like a city. So we can type in like city at night aerial. So images like this that have a lot of bright colors in there could also be pretty interesting. There was one that AdZombies was using. Let's see if I can find it. Let's see, city night aerial. I think I might have found it before, but I'm not sure which one it was. But basically, I saw this advertiser. They were using this aerial view of a city, and it was like this really brightly lit city, and it just really stood out in the newsfeed, but I can't really find it. So it was similar to this, but there's a lot brighter colors in it, right? But this is the general idea of what I'm talking about there. Right, so that's basically it for pattern interrupts, right? The main goal of your image or video is to get somebody to stop, okay? If you get them to stop, then you are in a good position, because then they have a chance to read the ad, click over, and then become a customer, okay? So remember that the number one purpose and the number one thing that your image has to do is it has to stop that scroll. So go for bright shades, interesting objects, a desirable result, and that will help people stop what they're doing on Facebook, right? Looking at their cat, dog photos, and all that stuff. This is going to help them stop and read the ad. All right, so I think that is that's pretty much it for this section. So hopefully that helps you out when it comes to picking images, videos, and that kind of stuff, right? It's all the same stuff. It's just getting somebody to stop and click, and to click with actual context, right? All right, so let's talk a little bit about headlines, okay? Because these are also important, because these are also going to be a determining factor. It's going to be one of the factors that controls your click-through rates, okay? Because like I said, there's a lot of people like me who just click a lot of ads just based on the headline, right? So like I said, you're going to be wanting to model not only different people, your competitors and things like that, right? Look at how they are wording their headlines. There's a few different structures that you can use, right? So you have like benefit-driven, curiosity headlines, that kind of stuff. Basically, the headline just has to be curious. At the minimum, it has to be curious enough to get somebody to want to read the ad or to click over, right? I've seen a couple different ads using curiosity headlines, a lot of them using benefit headlines. They all work. Just make sure it's curious enough. If you're going with like a benefit headline, you want to make sure that you're wording the benefit in a way that's curious, right? So an example of this for like maybe like an online business course could be like how I fired my boss in 90 days, right? Things like that. You're basically taking the desirable result, which is to quit your job, and then you're framing it in an interesting and curious way, okay? And that's one of the ways I see, myself included, right? I see a lot of people wording their headlines like that. It's really curiosity and benefit based. Some of them are completely based on curiosity, but I recommend testing, the whole curiosity thing, kind of fuse curiosity and benefit together, and that makes really great headlines. And you can get an example of different structures you can use. For example, like I was talking about Viral Nova. Go ahead and take a look at Viral Nova, Wall Street Journal, all that kind of stuff, and look at how they are wording things. You notice a lot of them are using numbers. Numbers are eye-catching and curious. People, for whatever reason, people are more receptive to numbers. So I recommend testing out different numbers in your headlines and also in your copy itself, because, like I said, for whatever reason, people are more receptive to numbers. Yeah, but there's really not that much to headlines. It's just something that you kind of have to get a feel for. So go ahead and check out those websites. Look at how your competitor advertisers are actually wording their headlines and model what they are doing. And you'll start to get a feel. Oh, this thing like snap. You'll start to get a feel for how to do this kind of stuff. Okay? It's not that hard. It's not that complicated. And the fundamentals are simple. It's really based, like I said, kind of like curiosity and benefit. You kind of merge those things together and you can get some really nice headlines. Now, obviously, that's not the only way to make a headline, but I find that's generally what seems to work the best, okay, based on my results and the results I've seen other advertisers get. It has to have a curiosity factor that also kind of ties into the what's in it for me question that you're addressing on the ad, okay? So if you do that, right, you test different headlines using that kind of formula. You can also test it, just completely based on curiosity and completely based on benefit and see if that works, right? Because ultimately, and you're going to get tired of me saying this, right? But everything, in advertising is forever and always going to be about testing, right? So even though curiosity and benefit fused together kind of work the best for me, it does not mean it's going to be the best thing for your product, okay? So kind of test different things on the spectrum. Try things completely based on curiosity. Try things completely benefit based, go in the middle, and test things, model different things that other people are doing and test those too. And see what resonates the best with your audience, okay? Because the only way to know that what's going to work the best is to actually test it, okay? The numbers do not lie. The numbers will never lie. All right, so I think that is pretty much all I wanted to talk about in this one, right? So I think we covered a lot of ground. With ad copy, we got into a lot of great detail about the structures, how to stop people, and how to construct headlines, right? Different formats you can use, right, to get people to actually read your ad and click on it, right? So if you have any questions about that, feel free to put it in the comments below. I'd be more than happy to answer that for you. But I think that is pretty much everything I wanted to go over today. So hopefully you found that useful. If you found this useful, or you have somebody that you feel somebody could benefit from this, feel free to share it with them if you think it would help them out, and share it if you want to help support what I'm doing here. I go live every single Wednesday at 9, and I'm talking about all this, dropping all this value based on my experience and what I'm currently doing in my business right now. So yeah, I need to get better with this whole outro thing. Alright, so I do not know what I'm going to talk about next week yet, but we'll announce that in a few days. Now, there is a quick side note I want to talk about, actually two quick side notes. The first one is also to remember this kind of general business stuff here, right? But you want to make sure, I need to stop saying that phrase. You need to stick to one thing in your business when you're first starting out. This is a mistake that I have made again and again and again and again. Okay, because I try and do like 20 different things at once, right? And when I try and do 20 different things at once, I end up getting 0 things done. So my advice is, when you're first starting out with your business, or maybe you're even making some money with your business, you want to make sure, there's that phrase again, need to stop saying that. Try and keep it to one thing. I've learned this lesson the hard way several times, and I found myself kind of drifting into that direction again. If you've been following my lives, you might have noticed that maybe like the past couple, like at the end, I'll kind of throw out like, oh yeah, I'm making this thing, or I'm working on this product, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that, right? And the thing is that when you keep spreading your focus out, right, it kind of thins out the current business that you're in. And I find that a couple things that I have wanted to do recently have kind of been thinning out what I've been trying to do here with my ad copy business. So just take it from me, you want to focus on one thing. So my main focus from now on is going to be the Facebook ads and the ad copy, okay, and the Fiverr, because that's currently where one of my main model is right now, right? I want to focus solely on those things just because they all kind of tie together. And yeah, that's going to be the main thing that I'm focusing on. So if you happen to go by and watch any of my previous replays, just kind of ignore some of the other things I'm saying at the end. I want to focus solely on my ad copy thing, okay, and the Fiverr. So that all that kind of stuff kind of intertwines, like I said. So yeah, so I want to talk about that. And the second thing is, I saw a post earlier. Let me see if I can find it. It was a post by Frank Kern, and he was talking about how. Just give me 1 second. I apologize. Yeah. It was this post from Frank Kern. I have it right up here, and he was talking about how Dan Kennedy passed away last night. And if you don't know who Dan Kennedy is, he's basically one of the pioneers of direct response marketing, right? He has laid a lot of the fundamental groundwork of modern marketing and advertising, kind of like a Eugene Schwartz, right, with copywriting and advertising and that kind of thing. So I mean, obviously I didn't know Dan Kennedy personally, but I think the industry has really lost one of like the fathers of modern advertising and marketing. I think that's very sad and unfortunate, right? So my condolences go out to his family and his friends. He is one of those people who didn't just kind of go out there to make a bunch of money. He is one of those people who went out there to change the world, right, and to create a legacy, right? And what he has developed and what he has taught is something that's going to be literally like relevant for decades upon decades, right? His influence and his teachings and his legacy are going to be around for quite a while, right? And I just think what he has been able to accomplish in his lifetime is absolutely amazing and inspiring, and something that everybody should aspire to do, right? Is to not just go out there and be all about yourself, right? To go out there and try and change the world positively in your own way, right? And I think Dan Kennedy is one of those people who has done that, right? He's taken his love for marketing and advertising and business, and he's changed literally millions of lives, right? And he's going to continue to change millions of lives because of the foundation that he has set and the legacy that he has built throughout his lifetime. Right, so I'm just going to leave it on that. Again, very unfortunate. So, yeah. But I think that's... I just want to cut it there because I think that's all I have to say about that. But he was an amazing person, and hopefully he rests in peace. All right, so I will see you next time in the next Ethical Marketing Secrets.